every 2 to 3 months and bring some topic of interest to you so that you can learn more about what you need to know in terms of just services for people with disabilities or legislation for people with disabilities. Many times our presentations are something to do with lawmaking or funding or something to do with the legislature. But today we have a speaker from the administration, and she's going to be talking about some of the programs that the legislature has funded and some of the things that she's doing to administrate those programs and to look at improvements. So I don't want to spend too much time for myself talking, but I do want to give you an introduction to Kylie. So Kylie Bassett Hope is originally from LaGrange, Indiana. She holds a bachelor's degree in special education from Purdue University and a law degree from Robert McKinney School of Law at Indiana University. She's held positions in special education coordination in the state of Indiana, at Indiana University and at Ball State, before becoming the Director of Rehabilitative Services at the state in 2013. There she oversaw the vocational rehabilitation services. In March of 2016, she was appointed to the position of the Director of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, often known as DIRS. In this position, she oversees, among other things, I know I didn't get every single thing, but she oversees First Steps, VR, group home programs, the intermediate care facilities for people with developmental disabilities, Medicaid waiver, and other programs related to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. In her tenure as DIRS Director, she has worked to keep the focus on the individual and the division supports. She's also always pushing for person-centered approaches and helping these individuals have a good life. Kylie has been long connected to the ARC, of which Stonebelt is the Monroe County chapter, having grown up with a brother who has disabilities and a mother and father who have had leadership roles in the ARC of Indiana and the ARC US. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Kylie Hope. Please join me in welcoming her.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. How exciting to be here and to see all of your faces in Bloomington. I'm sorry that I graduated from Purdue. I hope no one holds that against me. What?
Are we going to win?
I don't know. Good point.
What do you like, Purdue or IU?
I mean, IU? Is that the right answer? Well, as I appreciate being here and I appreciate Leslie's introduction, I am very excited to always present information to individuals and families and community members and providers and anyone connected to the world of disability so that we can all identify kind of appropriate pathways and trajectories that we want to make sure that we see Indiana and what services and supports we want to make sure that individuals that just happen to have disabilities can do what they want to do and live the life that they want to do. As Leslie said, I do have a background in education and policy, and to be fair and frank, the reason I'm in this job, even though I didn't know I would be in this world, is truly because of the passion of being a sibling, never really knowing any different of having a younger brother that happens to also have a disability. He also utilizes many of the services that I quote unquote administer. So it's an interesting perspective, right? As a team member, one day, and then it's like, oh, that's how that was implemented. Well, how do we make that better? So I wear those professional and personal hats quite frequently in my role today. So I know and I value very much family perspective and individual perspective because it is critical to understand the state of the state, but also understand particular local communities and understanding what they have or don't have or what they need. So today I am specifically going to talk about one of the key initiatives that was initiated back in 2016, which I'll get into a little bit, but really focused in on after the 1102 task force. And I'll explain a little bit. Maybe you guys know, maybe you don't know, but there was legislation passed, which was awesome, that there was a statewide task force of identifying how Indiana is going to improve the services and supports for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the Lieutenant Governor chaired that task force, which is awesome as well, because it gave, some credence and some trust and some recognition to many of the areas of need or the potential modernization of our system where we want to go as well. So as part of that, I'm going to talk about, maybe you have heard what's called the Waiver Redesign process that the state of Indiana is undergoing. It's a slow and methodical process. This is not going to be a quick turnaround because we truly believe that it is critical to have stakeholder input along the process and to make sure that we do not have significant unintended consequences for making those changes. So I want to just explain, because I never like to presume that everyone understands the crazy world of bureaucracy at the state. So let me put this in perspective a little bit of where I sit and what does that mean. I think Leslie gave a great intro, but I sit under what's called the Family Social Services Administration. So that administration houses things like Indiana Medicaid, the Division of Aging, the Division of Family Resources, the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, the Division of Mental Health and Addiction. And all those divisions work together on various programs, and that many of you are probably familiar with at some point, maybe in your life. Within the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, there are several programs. So the positive is that I get to see a lifespan of individuals from early intervention, from that birth to 3 program, as well as to individuals that utilize the Medicaid waiver system in our world and vocational rehabilitation as part of getting some employment opportunities and jobs. So it's an interesting perspective, and one in which is formulating within that division of one specific process. Oh, you did a little bit. Can you go back to the waiver redesign one? That's all right. So let me talk a little. Oh yeah, microphone. Let me talk a little bit about the waiver. How many people know what a waiver is? Don't be shy. All right. Awesome. You know in Indiana that we have the Family Support Waiver and the Community Integration Habilitation Waiver for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. A little background, if you don't know what a waiver is, which is completely fine, because I thought I knew what a waiver was until I actually got in this role. But a waiver is a term of art that the federal government uses, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Service uses, to kind of waive requirements from CMS for states. So what that waiver is saying is that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities may meet a level of care that meets for, I think our last public institution closed in 2007, which is very positive, and that waived their right to kind of those public institutions, and that we utilize what's called a home and community-based service and support array, or a waiver, which we say for short, to ensure that individuals are able to live as independently as possible in their community of choice, with the services and support that the Division of Disability and Rehabilitation provides. And so what we're looking at here with some transformational change is really specifically looking at what is the Indiana's waiver structure and what type of service menu should we offer to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Indiana. So we are going through this transformation. So why, you might ask, right? Why are we going to try and relook at this foundational waiver system? Indiana's system hasn't been transformed since the late 90s. And in 2016, myself and the ARC of Indiana did 15 town hall meetings throughout the state of Indiana, specifically focused on families and individuals. And we really asked the question of what people needed. What did people want? What were people frustrated with? And we took that information and started to formalize some needs of our state for the waiver system. There were also sets of legislation that passed in 2014, one being the Home and Community-Based Settings Rule from CMS that required our continuation push or focus on ensuring that Medicaid home and community-based waiver funding monies were going appropriately to services that did ensure that people were respected and had dignity and people had choice, people had keys to their apartments, and there's a long list of areas that we needed to ensure that Medicaid waiver funding was supporting. And so those types of things, based on what family feedback and individual feedback we received, as well as some of the changes from the federal government, we embarked upon, and the 1102 Task Force recommendations, we embarked upon this waiver transformation process. So in January, we kicked off this waiver redesign concept paper, right here. And if you haven't checked it out, please check it out. It's on our website. We also kicked off the whole transformational piece by identifying some national partners. And we kicked off the whole process in April of 2019. And so we know that in Indiana, we can't do this alone. Not only with some great stakeholder feedback, we also wanted to ensure that we had national organizations and groups as part of that. So our main lead is the Human Services Research Institute out of Oregon, HSRI, and they have done this work for a number of states. And so we went through a contract process. They proposed a bid to us that and won. And so HSRI is our main lead. As you can see, even IIDC here in Bloomington is a key partner as part of our waiver redesign process, as well as the University of Missouri, Kansas City, who assisted in the community of practice for supporting families, which is called the Life Course Framework. So there's a lot of key national experts joining our team to help take Indiana through this process to have a different waiver foundational system in Indiana. So our goals for this project, I also have to say sometimes, so we have families and individuals that ask, as the state, when I was an advocate, now coming from the state, I understand the shoes that many of you guys sit in. There is no lawsuit, there is no need to try and clamp down on our fiscal, that the reason for this change and the reason for the transformation is truly because we have heard from families and individuals that they are wanting something different. Maybe not something completely different, but something they have better access to, a different type of service. So example, things as simple as technology, right? Technology that happened in 1993 is very different than technology today in 2020. And so how can we even incorporate some of those facets or pieces into our waiver service array so that an individual could actually purchase that through their home and community-based waiver to utilize to support them in their lifelong process. So I also want to calm all of you guys that we are not in Indiana trying to make a huge disruption to what you currently have. If I may say, I think many of you who are happy with what you currently have, maybe on a family support waiver or on the community integration habilitation waiver, you likely will be able to remain utilizing those same types of services. But we are looking at how do we expand some options from what individuals may want. And so part of the goals or the guiding principles, if you will, that were developed by the state of Indiana along with our national experts are several. So increased person-centered planning or philosophy. I know this term gets thrown around a lot in our world, right? However, it is critical that the individual and the families are truly the drivers of the plan and truly the drivers of the types of supports they want. They shouldn't, if you're driving a bus, I don't want them in the back, clear back, or even always in the front of the bus. I want them in the driver's and sometimes maybe the passenger seat to make sure that that's part of their plan and part of what they want in life and how do they utilize services that they are able to do that. I also Indiana wants to ensure that there is an improvement in the coordination of care. So as many of you guys know, there are lots of eligibility services that one may be having access to, from the family support waiver and even Medicaid state plan for maybe some health care needs or acute health needs that they have. How do you coordinate between home and community-based waiver services from that family support waiver, as well as how do you ensure that there are lots of state plan services that one may not even be aware of but may have some interest in developing in order to really kind of ensure they have the pathway to a better life. We also look at community resources, all the local community resources. We look at those natural supports. We also look at technology. So how do we ensure that we are doing a better job of improving kind of that coordination of care, whether it be from a medical perspective, also for a local resource perspective, in order to, again, going back to the first one, ensuring that we can have individuals living their person-centered life, or the life that they are choosing to live. Our other piece is we want to increase community engagement. We want to offer opportunities and continue to identify a service array that ensures that individuals do not have to live an isolated life, that they are able to identify opportunities or utilize the type of service to continually have their options to be in the community as they may prefer. We also want to enhance the member experience. I know that's government speak to say, yeah, we want to make sure that they can have a better experience as they come through the front door and utilize kind of the BEAD services, and to be quite frank, any division of disability and rehabilitative services. We want to also maintain qualified providers. We want to make sure that they not only maintain the qualified providers, but I know many of you, is probably on your mind, is the workforce needs of this industry and many others, and how do we ensure that we can attract new providers, and how do we maintain kind of our current provider array. And I think that goes again down to kind of the direct care staff, which are very critical to actually implementing many of the services and supports that many of you probably utilize or your loved one utilizes. We also want to comply with the home and community-based settings rule. As I said earlier, that was another part of the impetus of part of our change in 2016. In 2014, this bill was passed, and it is required by the federal government that we are in compliance with this rule by 2022. We also want to, of course, promote efficiency. That's another government term, I'm going to be honest. But it's really identifying, are there things in the current waiver structure or system that are just overly burdensome? Are there things that we can just, while we have to abide by CMS rules, but are there things that we can decrease kind of administrative burden to make sure that there is, quote unquote, maybe better flexibility or a better array to use better supports in a more creative pathway based on the individual's needs? So you might ask, what is this concept paper anyways? So again, in January of 2020, this concept paper was released. And our purpose of this is to truly give you a concept. There are no final decisions in this concept paper, which again, I think making sure that individuals know how to maybe review this and then provide input. So we are sharing things that we want to be considered, and we are taking pretty significant feedback, from verbal feedback from some of the town hall meetings we are doing, to information that has been submitted on our website, to some of our Facebook comments that we've already received. But as to be clear, there will be a point in time that we'll have a final document that says, Indiana, this is the waiver process we're going to go and submit to CMS. But right now, this is an initial concept. This provides ideas, thoughts, concepts that Indiana, as well as our national partners, thought Indiana had the appetite for, and that it aligned with the stakeholder feedback that we received. So a quick piece. This concept paper, I'll be honest, is maybe about 54 pages. I know that not everyone's going to read that, or you could read it at night and probably fall asleep. But there also is an overview option. So it's a simplified version, an executive summary like. So that is another option that you can utilize. And that each section we broke up so that you could read that. And then there's kind of key questions that as a person and an individual, a stakeholder that's reviewing this can ponder. Because we understanding reading all of this, even in the executive summary, it's like, okay, and, right? But there's some guiding questions to ask, and you'll see some of those today on where we want to get the feedback from. Can I just stop for a second And I see some confused faces, so I just want to make sure, is there any questions or clarifications that I can make before I move into what is actually in this paper? Yes?
There's the challenge of writing the paper and hearing from stakeholders of participants, but is it to be budget neutral? What is the, are there restrictions? You use the term and I can't remember, but within the confines of Indiana. So, from the legislature, what was the dictate?
Yes, so great question, couple things. The reason we're doing this waiver redesign process, I want to dispel a myth, is not because the legislature or our state budget agency has come to us and says, man, this is expensive for this program and you need to cut it by, 3%. That is not why we're doing this project. We do intend or hope initially that we will look at things to be budget neutral as best as we can. However, with the 1102 task force that was chaired by the Lieutenant Governor and the waiver redesign concept paper being about 2/3 of those recommendations are incorporated into this waiver concept paper, I think there are some opportunities potentially that as stakeholder groups in the disability industry, we can work to potentially identify what needs are for the whole process. So we do not have, because it's just an initial concept, we do not have a budget statement or the end all be all, like here's what the budget impact is going to be. It's clearly in the process after we get the final comments in April, but we will soon be able to know where are we with respect to our current budget, and if we do pathway 1 or 2, this is where we may need to be to enhance that type of service. All right, so one question back here.
Yeah, what is the actual website where we can go and see this?
Yes, it's bdds.in.gov. And if you also have if you have Facebook, it also is the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services. There's a lot of information on there. You can probably also just Google Indiana waiver concept paper. I bet it will come up that way as well. But let's dive into, though, I'll also make sure there's room for questions. I just wanted to check in to make sure you guys were with me before we started looking at what pieces of this concept paper we're going to talk about. So the first piece is waiver configuration. So what does that mean? So currently in Indiana, we have a waiver configuration that exists of 2 1915C waivers. You don't really need to know what that means, but in essence, it is a fee-for-service model to provide home and community-based services through Indiana or through Medicaid. And so what we are considering in a waiver structure is, what are the options in Indiana? Do we need to continue on to have a 2-waiver structure? Or is there an opportunity to look at a 3-waiver structure, which we'll get into a little bit? Some states have 1 waiver, some states have 2, some states have 3, some states have 5. Some states have waivers that are only focused on one particular population group, like autism, and some have different types of waiver vehicles that they utilize in CMS. So all states can look and vary very differently. And so that was helpful from a national perspective and the national subject matter experts to kind of, again, take the information in Indiana and review where they think that Indiana can potentially move and what is our capacity for change, right? We know, and I know, as being kind of that family individual or family connection, that changing anything of someone's day-to-day supports can be jarring and make people nervous, and we want to ensure that that is not the intent, that people understand that is not the intent, and so that's where we are wanting some of this type of feedback. So let's talk about 2 pathways that you'll see in this waiver redesign concept paper that Indiana is considering. So HSRI has identified that we could do one of 2 paths. We can continue on having a 2-waiver system, but really looking at modernizing our service array potentially look at what do those priority categories, meaning how do people get on the waiver, what do those look like? And then we also, the positive as well that HSRI indicated was identifying that, there is a lot of anxiety attached to any type of Medicaid change, and that maybe this is an easier way or have a better appetite for the state of Indiana in ensuring that we aren't making significant changes to individuals day to day. So that is one pathway, which we'll get into some of the services and that type of thing in a second. But the second pathway is introducing a mid-tier waiver. So that means that we have heard a lot of individuals and families in essence say, right, the current family support waiver of $17,300 is not sufficient to support me in my needs to be as independent as I want to be or to have the quality of life that I want to be. And the community integration habilitation waiver has priority categories that require pretty emergent situations to occur in order for an individual to gain access to a community integration habilitation waiver. And that we heard from a lot of families that it would be helpful. I don't need X percent of a budget on a waiver. I need just a little bit more for me to do X, Y, and Z. And so this is an introduction. Now I do not know, because we haven't done the budget, I do not know what that middle tier kind of capped reserve, what that capacity would be, or how many individuals would be on there yet. However, it's a consideration from a stakeholder group. Is that something that you feel like would be beneficial to you, to your loved one, to your neighbor, to other individuals that you maybe work with day to day that happen to utilize home and community-based services? So you'll see in the concept paper questions like this, which I'm happy to talk about again as we at the end. But what is the path that you feel like works best in Indiana, or would be maybe an avenue for us to go down? I want to also clarify that I don't anticipate, I hope not, that this process is the only time in the next 25, 30 years that Indiana will ever consider continuously evolving their waiver system. That I hope that as technology and as our civil rights movement of people with disabilities and the identification of growing the local community and better acceptance, that we will continue reviewing what also needs to happen. So I think it's important for you guys to understand that we are trying to truly rebuild a foundational piece that meets 2020 of what people, individuals, and families want, and how we can best support individuals in their life goals. But we do not intend to make some major disruption that frustrates everyone, that makes everyone anxious. That is not our intent. And I also want to be reasonable that we may not be able to do everything everyone wants in this first kind of redesign. However, we have already identified things with our national partner of things that we would love to look at even in the future and to move forward of modernizing our system. So case management. Any case managers in here? No? Case management is a vital service on our family supports waiver and our community integration habilitation waivers. And our stakeholders have made it very clear that they are vital. The vehicle by which we utilize, or our contract, if you will, with CMS requires case management to be a service on whatever type of waiver structure we choose. So as part of the stakeholder feedback, we also heard that for case managers, they felt like they wanted more time with their case managers. They felt like they wanted their case managers to be helpful in engaging them in more community kind of resource development or connections. We also understood from stakeholder feedback that they needed to better understand their role. Like, what is the function of a case manager and how do they support me as part of utilizing home and community-based services? And they also indicated that they felt like it would be beneficial if case managers received some more training and had some additional oversight from the state. And so currently we have listed out above the in general, case management responsibilities as a case manager for individuals that receive the family support waiver or the CIH waiver. So as part of that feedback, there is a section in this waiver concept paper that we want to know from the stakeholders, from you, what kind of supports you feel that that we should see in the delivery of case management in Indiana. Are there things that we're missing? Are there things that you feel like would be more beneficial? We've heard a lot of information from case management about case management before this even was put out, and so we were able to kind of identify some of those needs, but we want to continue to harp on, because case management is a vital service, how can we ensure that we can improve that? And maybe there are some great things, practices going on that we may not even know about that we want to make sure we can capture. Self-direction. So this is probably one of the more innovative pieces that is in this concept paper. So Indiana, I'll be honest, is considering of dipping our toe in the water of self-direction. So I look at self-direction as a big umbrella term, and that there's pieces in self-direction that we can continue and consider. And we're considered two of them, which I'll talk about. But let me talk to you about the end goal of self-direction. So there's opportunities to identify what's called a self-directed waiver, which means that really the individual utilizing that waiver is, quote unquote, directing their services. They're sometimes hired a fiscal intermediary from the state, and those individuals identify who they want to support, how they want them to support, and have very much more independence and autonomy over that self-direction. Currently in the state, our division in HSRI, while we would love to consider that, again, in the future, we do not feel like, one, we have the capacity, the knowledge base in Indiana, or the ability fiscally right now to do a self-directed waiver. So when I say we want to tip our toes into self-direction, here are the two ways by which we want to maybe consider that. And the first one is participant-directed goods and services. So what that means is to say, as part of your budget that you have for whatever waiver that you have, that there is a budget that's set aside, let's say, I'm making this up, please, $500 for simplicity fees. That you have $500 that Medicaid traditionally will not pay for X type of service or good. However, there is a mechanism in which a qualified Medicaid provider could assist that individual in purchasing that on their behalf. So when you think about goods, there may be things related to maybe special equipment, or maybe some technology, or passes to specific events, or services, things like house cleaning potentially, or some transportation needs, or maybe a gym membership. Those are some of those considerations that we want to maybe see if we can aid in allowing individuals some more freedom and flexibility to meet their needs, individual needs. However, I also want to clarify, some people think that means here's your $500 and go do with it as you want. CMS will not let us do that. So when I say you would have to pass that money through a qualified provider, I understand there's still some efficiency needs. However, there is more flexibility for the individual to maybe purchase items that they would not otherwise be able to purchase in some of our current service delivery. The other is agency with choice. And, to be quite frank, I think many providers and individuals kind of do this already because of the workforce needs. Many individuals, I know myself included, we really try and identify maybe family or friends to kind of assist in providing the services or the direct care needs of our loved ones or for yourself. And so, this is a more formalized way of ensuring that the provider really is responsible for kind of the quote-unquote paperwork and the training, but then that individual really has the ability to kind of choose their staff and direct their staff of how it best fits their needs. So that is probably, again, self-direction is a big term, but Indiana is looking at these two options potentially introducing in our new waiver redesign concept. And so what we want to hear from stakeholders like you are, do you think this is a good idea? Do you feel like these are ways in which there could be, individuals could have more control in getting their needs met? So let's go into service delivery, or service changes. So as many of you probably know, there are a whole host of array of service options on home and community-based services. And I joke because sometimes I go to meetings and I have to even tell my brother's case manager that you need to explain these things to me, because things like CHIO and BMAN and RHS and PT and OT and all those things, right? PAC, you know, what's another one? So, right? Everyone's kind of laughing, but that is sometimes how information is delivered to individuals, right? And it's uncomfortable because you don't know what is BMAN. What does that mean? What's RHS? What's CHIO? How do I use that? How is that going to help me live the life that I want to live? So our national subject matter experts went through our current service array that we offer on the family support waiver and the community integration habilitation waiver, and they did 4 things. They clarified service names, so hopefully people understood if service says X, that's what you get. So there's not really any ambiguity. They also looked at how could we maybe group certain services and simplify services. We also looked at how do we need to maybe change or even remove services, maybe due to lack of utilization, maybe just not because it's 2020 and not 1995, maybe not utilized anymore. And then lastly, they looked at, from a national perspective, are there more innovative service options that Indiana could add to their waiver structures to enhance the service and support array for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities? So I have some examples, and again, I know that many of you probably don't even know what is offered, because as I started and working with my brother until I came in this role, I didn't really know what all these services were. But currently on your left, there are 2 services, extended services and pre-vocational services. And those are services that are currently on our waivers. And many of you, if I said, do you guys want extended services? You would say, what? What is that? What's that going to help me do, right? Why would I want extended services? So as part of, again, task number 1, they went through and said, you know what extended service is? It's supported employment. Does that maybe make you understand a little better of what that service would do and help you as an individual, what you would try and accomplish with that? The other is pre-vocational services. That one's a little easier to understand, but in Indiana, we thought it was really important to maybe re-highlight that pre-vocational services was really kind of that learning and work experience opportunity. So maybe those individuals that are still trying and want to obtain some specific job skills, and really trying to create kind of a broader opportunity to utilize pre-vocational services in a variety of different ways. The other that we want to talk about is kind of the second tier when they talk about group and simplify services. I kind of chuckle when I talk to families and individuals about this, because I don't even know that this is kind of behind the scenes things that happen. But currently we have residential habilitation support and residential habilitation support daily. One is billed more on an encompassing rate, and one is billed more on an hourly rate. And so instead of having kind of this nuance and confusion for the teams and the case managers, we are looking at grouping that and identifying what is the appropriate rate for just residential habilitation and support, instead of having varied, really the same type of service multiple times in our waivers. The other piece that I indicated is the third option that they did, and again, these are just examples, how we are changing and removing services. So we identified also that there is a family and caregiver training. How many of you guys have even heard of that service that's currently on our waiver? Well, you don't count, but no, you do count. But But we really looked again of saying, how can we just make this more general? That this is a service to ensure that there are supports, not only to the individual, but potentially supports for the family and the caregivers based on what that family and caregiver and individual's needs are. The other one is structured family caregiving. Have any of you guys heard of that? Okay, ma'am. That also is an interesting name. I mean, it comes out of, many states have structured family caregiving, but really this is a shared living model. So if you think about foster care, right, for kids, it is a very similar model for living options for individuals of identifying kind of a direct care staff potentially, or a family member or a friend that has an opportunity to identify, hey, I want this person to live with me, and as part of this shared living model, and as part of you get paid through particular contracts with certain providers to really enhance kind of the individual's life. It's not a staff coming to the home and providing X number of hours, but really individual and that person having a family-like unit that is appropriately matched so that they can live the life again that they want. As many of you guys may be familiar with foster care, you understand that maybe the enhancement, the benefits of having, again, that family unit, that place that you can call home, those supports that, oh, my staff person is from this time to this time, but you know that your family unit or the shared living person that you're living with may have added flexibility. So it is an area that is underutilized in Indiana for a variety of reasons, and one being sometimes the rate structure it currently has. But it also has, in some counties, has been absolutely successful, and one in which that as we kind of move forward with the waiver concept paper, one in which that we as a state, and we know from providers and some stakeholders that we want to ensure that people better understand this and can explore how does this actually work in implementation. Lastly, as part of the service array, we looked at how do we add services and what makes sense of maybe some more creative options. So stakeholders expressed interest in these particular areas, and so let me explain to you how then those service array match up. So we also know that from various families and individuals and providers that it's sometimes difficult for individuals who want to live on their own to find good and affordable housing. And so in Minnesota, they have a housing support service that HSRI thought that Indiana was primed and ready for, and that we could continue to explore ways to enhance kind of our support with our own Indiana Housing Authority in identifying ways and supports and services to aid families and individuals in really doing that navigation and identifying where they could potentially find those housing options. Healthy living service is another one. We know that people have a variety of needs like all of us, right? And that individuals, just because they have disabilities and happen to be on one of these waivers, they don't fit in a neat little box of what they get and what they don't get. So things under healthy living that we want to consider are like nutrition education, bereavement counseling, education of safe and healthy relationships. And it can be pretty broad. However, those are some of those initial considerations that we know from other states that have been successful. And so again, from that national survey of home and community-based service options, this is one in which they felt that Indiana could potentially be ready with based on what stakeholders indicated they wanted. Expressive therapy services was another. We hear a lot from families that they want music therapy and art therapy and drama therapy and therapeutic horseback riding. And so that is another option that we are looking at adding to our waiver service to expand again what some of those expressive therapies are and maybe aligning again with their person-centered plan. Lastly, we have heard a lot of how do we create those opportunities in the community, those natural kind of connections. So that service is looking at peer support and community connection. So this is again saying how can we, from a service and support perspective, really become more engaged in the community, and how do we have kind of those connectors, if you will, those support individuals that aid in those relationship buildings with the individual. So it just as maybe an example, so if you have an individual that loves doing family history and loves that type of research of Ancestry.com, right? Actually, this is an example that I am aware of. What happened is actually there was a connection from a case manager that said, hey, I know Jim, and he is retired, and he loves ancestry kind of exploration and history, and they connected, and they met at the local library once a week, and they committed for about an hour or 2 hours of time, and they worked together because they both had that keen interest, and they are loving it, and they've been doing it for about 18 months now. And so while that was kind of a natural connection, this is kind of the intent of that peer support and connection is, are there people or within even a provider entity that we can really focus in on connecting people with their local community to ensure that they are getting those community connections, which we all know those kind of natural supports and those added friendships are also important to many of our individuals. So as part of, again, the waiver redesign, when you get to talking about services, I ask again, these are some key questions that we want you to consider, and we want you to kind of deliver feedback to us. Do you think these suggested changes make sense? Are there other things we're missing? Are any of these changes make it more difficult for you maybe to use service? Like, please do not add that service, or if you change that service, that doesn't make sense. I don't want any of you guys to feel like there is a specific protocol by which you have to respond. You can also just say, hey, State of Indiana, it would be really helpful if I had this service. That also is great information that we can then go back and interpret, and how does that work with a CMS kind of waiver contract. Lastly, and I want to make sure we have time for questions, a couple pieces, is that Indiana is part of, again, all states have to have CMS assurances. And many times those assurances are very compliance-based. We recognize in Indiana that we want to do better, and that we want to understand really, are home and community-based services getting to the quality aspects of people's lives? So for example, right, there's a CMS assurance about the person-centered planning process or the individualized support plan. How many people have it? Do they all have them? Okay, right? We all know that you can upload a plan and check everyone in our system has a plan. But is that plan of quality? That's debatable, right? So we are trying in our transition into our waiver redesign, really look at better quality opportunities and metrics that we can look at to assess how our home and community-based services are really performing. We've made a few changes already. So these are currently in our waiver renewal process of really, we'll see if the CMS approves them, but we are really starting to look at the percent of sampled individuals who report that their services and support are actually helping them to live the life they want, whether or not their participants who responded that their case managers asked what they wanted as part of their service plan. And I know this seems basic, but as serving about the number of individuals we do, it is varied across the state and across what the individual's kind of experiences with our system. And then lastly, looking at the percentage of waiver participants who do not feel afraid or scared in their home or day program. And this really gets to kind of the abuse and exploitation piece of our service system to ensure and try and get some more perspective from the individual that is actually utilizing our system, and not just on the reactive side if there's an incident report that is filed. So in general, again, these are, I know it's hard maybe from a stakeholder to say, well, here's the quality metrics, but even what are some of your concerns with the quality of the current system? Because that would also give us ideas of maybe ways in which we can continuously monitor and make some different changes in our metrics. Again, this is one that will probably continuously evolve over the years. Lastly, you can go to one more. Yeah. Some ways to kind of share your thoughts. So the BEADS website is great. We also have a DDRS listserv that if you aren't part of that, I recommend being part of that. That will give you email notifications of what's going on all the time. We also have a DDRS advisory council meetings that meet monthly. The 1102 task force continues to meet, and that task force is streamed, so you can watch it. We also have self-advocates doing town hall meetings right now to get initial feedback from a face-to-face process. And they have varied. I know Fort Wayne's meeting was actually canceled yesterday because of the snow. However, there is a schedule of what those meetings may be available. We also are doing what's called Building Bridges, and that is the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services Director, Kathy Robinson, and her team are also doing family-focused, individual-focused opportunities for just pretty an informal conversation. Let's have a conversation. What do you want? What do you not like? What are you guys doing? Can you explain this to me? So that there's some opportunities throughout the state. And those are also on our website. The next steps, so let me give you a little sense of this timeline. So the initial concept, like I indicated to you, was in January of 2020. We are receiving public input until April of 2020. We will then be looking at a final concept paper. So we're going to take everyone's ideas and then say, okay, we think this is the pathway forward. So you won't have two different pathways. You won't have, here's the service array that you may like or may not like. It will say, based on feedback, here is the movement that we're going to start going. There'll be another opportunity for public comment to say yay or nay or take anything that maybe we have missed. And then we will be developing, moving forward with writing the actual waiver plans and submitting that to CMS. So we are looking at a spring of 2022 implementation. So this is a long, thoughtful process that we have no intent of disruption currently. We want to really understand how we can change some foundational elements and ensuring we have already started conversations with CMS, with them on a monthly basis so that we are able to continue to ask questions, get technical assistance so they are aware of what we're doing and there's no kind of hidden questions at the end of the day and then we're having to kind of delay that process as well. So I know that was a lot in a short amount of time. But I absolutely appreciate kind of your listening and your thoughtfulness and the pondering I can see in some of your faces. I just want to open it up for questions about this. I'm also open to any questions about any of our services that maybe you're asking. If it's an individual specific question, I'm also can be here a little after that. I'm happy to talk to you separately as well. So I'll open up to some questions. Ian? Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned states that have one single waiver.
Mm-hmm.
Why not do one single waiver rather than trying to figure out what doctors are supposed to be in so that it's just an array of services depending on what you need for like that?
Yeah, so we've heard that a couple of times actually after we put out this initial concept paper. So I think if that, it's not, I want to say it's off the table. If that is something people want to consider, I would suggest please submit that as a comment to say, hey, have we considered this particular structure? I would say they did consider it and they probably felt Indiana wasn't necessarily ready for that because we intend to continue on keeping kind of the framework of our current bead system. And that if we had one waiver, there's a question of how do you kind of increase someone's budget if it's needed and then also decreasing that if it's no longer needed. And within that one waiver option, that may present some additional obstacles of putting all of the individuals in that one bucket. However, I think it's something that we have heard a few times that we have kind of already asked HSRI to maybe do a little more research on that to see and give us maybe the reasons why or why not Indiana may or may not be ready for that type of piece.
Interesting to know what other states are doing it and why.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Anything? What else? Yeah.
What's your waiting list like for waivers?
Right now, don't quote me on the exact number, but it's about 1,100 individuals on our wait list. And it's about roughly 9 months to get on our waiver, with the average age of 11.
That's actually really good compared to a lot of states.
Huh?
Why does it take so long? Why is there 1,100 waiting?
Well, there's always new people coming on. So as an average age of 11, we also have a 3-month-old on our wait list. So there is a continuation. I'm not sure that wait list will ever leave. And then we have, when you have a contract, if you will, with CMS about your waivers, you identify the capacity that you would target every month. And so Indiana currently targets 300 individuals every month. So, right, coming up March, April, the 300 will be targeted. It's a first come, first serve waiver process. However, we still have probably about 300 coming onto the wait list because, you know, family's knowledge and sometimes the First Steps program identifying some additional supports. And just as people are moving into recognizing what their family and individuals need. So there's not an ability to say, I'm going to target 1,100 individuals and put them on the waiver. Our current contract is that we target 300 a month. Does that make sense? No, okay.
I mean, as a consumer, it
Sure.
seems like an inordinate amount of time.
Sure. So in a little perspective, at one point Indiana was about 15 to 20 years wait list. Yeah. So there's a significant improvement. However, I understand for some families that 9-month wait is still problematic.
What would unclog that pipeline? Is it money? Is it personnel?
It would require a CMS amendment as well as likely additional funding.
Do other states have a similar weight?
Yes, and a lot of states have a significant higher rate as well.
To put it in perspective, Kansas is 5 to 7 years to get on the waiver. So 9 months is a lot because some states are really, really deep.
I think Illinois has 20,000 persons. There is 2,500. And she has some 2,500,000. A lot of reasons. What needs to happen to free that up?
So CMS contract would need to change, so what the waiver indicates, as well as likely additional budgetary from the legislation. Yeah. Sorry, I'd go here and then you.
I want to thank you for what's clearly been real law department and preparing the initial letter. And I really want to do this because I still know you're here to raise the money. My question is that to me, as a parent of someone with a disability, it feels like we're planning for a trip to Disney World with $25 budget. And so, do you have any sense that the legislature has any intention of better funding? Because without the SPs, it's nothing to prevent needs.
Yes, and can't say I disagree with your sentiment. I will be honest about that. And I think we are in a place of workforce crisis, one in which that I think the legislature has definitely heard due to some great work of, Leslie and many other provider CEOs and self-advocates of Indiana at the Valentine's Day. I don't want to speculate whether or not there's an appetite or not. That's a process that I'm not always in the committee meetings to understand. However, I think as we continue to grow, I think there's some positive movement. Again, I think the 1102 task force it was critical. I think it elevated the needs of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I very much appreciate the Lieutenant Governor's support. It is a big deal for the Lieutenant Governor of a state to recognize the various needs of our oftentimes very vulnerable population that not always gets the attention that maybe is necessary. So I'm optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic. However, I don't want budget to be, while we may have to make tweaks because of budget or live within the budget we have, I also don't want that to be stagnant of evolving service array for our people. that there is, people may be absolutely happy with what they have, which is great, but I know there's also individuals that want access to different types of things, and that we should continuously evolve in that plight. So thank you.
Yes. So as a parent, is there any particular website or something that we could view and it would spell out all of the acronyms and what each of the programs means? Because, well, our son is coming of age now. He's about to turn 19, and as we're getting into the community, we find people are always mentioning something. Well, there's this waiver or this waiver, but we've never heard of them before.
Yeah.
So it's very confusing. And then secondly, is there any attention ever paid to actually educating the people like in the Medicaid office that this is different than typical Medicaid? Because this isn't like every year you have to re-qualify and you have to go through the same process, and they never know what we're talking about when we say the waiver. So it's always very challenging because we feel like we're jumping through red tape and hoops every year for something our son's always going to have for the rest of his life. So navigating as a parent with the government entity, and just if we could just have a website where we could go and everything would be spelled out, you know, what services our child would qualify for at what age. I think that would be so great to have some sort of
Sure. No, you're not the only one that has said that. Unfortunately, I don't think that there is anything that is a one-stop shop to get everything that you want. However, I'm going to do, if you could give me your email address afterwards, I do think that I can give you a few resources, maybe not specifically from the state, that maybe would be a great kind of connector for you. But great kind of food for thought on how we continue to kind of empower and educate families and individuals, because like I said at the beginning, the best way to ensure that people get the services and supports they want is by being the driver, right? And indicating the expectations and saying how they want those services to support them, and having a dream that in 10 years I want to do X, right? And so there are ways in which I think that we could potentially, again, some future opportunities to continue to improve education, and to your point, cross-education from Social Security to Medicaid to the Division of Family Resources, county offices, to ensure that we can do better.
It's a horrible experience every year at the county office.
Yeah.
We never have any idea what we're talking about, and it's painful every year.
I support that. I don't think I've ever come out of the Department of Family Resources office without crying.
Yes.
And I'm steeped in this stuff. I think the misinformation between DFR and me has to be fixed.
Yeah.
People to navigate. You can educate families, and I think that is a very noble goal, but we also need to fix the systems integration problem as well, because educating us and then having us talk to people where that problem still exists is not.
Yeah. So another option that we're working on as the state, which is not fast, but really a lot of it comes down to IT systems, and ensuring that we can have more of a transparency and connectivity to the various IT systems, and ensuring that, right, you don't have to have all that information when you come in. They're able to do a check to see kind of that category. So I think to both of your points, I think educating of families as well as educating of all kind of staff that kind of work with our populations. I hear you. I think that is an area that we can continue to improve upon.
So I would like to say BEAS has a really good frequently asked questions website, and they do have acronyms and definitions on there.
Thank you. So.
Not all of it, but it's a good list.
Thank you so much, Kylie. I think that was really helpful. I've been reading this plan since the day it came out, and I learned new things today, so I'm really happy to have you here. We appreciate your leadership at the state, and appreciate all of you being here. As I said earlier, Kylie works basically in the governor's group. I mean, she's an administrator. She's in the executive branch. The executive branch. We also want to make sure that people in the legislative branch And those are the people that work in Indianapolis, our Indiana General Assembly. We want to make sure that they stay very aware of who we are. That's what those postcards on your table are about. And so we do these at any of our events that we have to let our legislators know that we care about issues that involve people with disabilities. If you don't know who your legislator is, you can go to stonebelt.org/advocacy and find your local representative, your local legislator. So we just ask that you put their address on here and a stamp, and put some information on here about why legislation, funding, rules, laws, all of that, why that's important to you, because if they know there are a lot of you out there, they're going to listen more. More people talking to them, more people being active is going to get their attention, and that's what we sorely need when we go to the State House and try to get funding or get rules changed or those kinds of things. So please take some time to do that. So again, thank you, Kylie. We will be back for an event on May 28th. I think that's the right date. I'm pretty sure that's the right date. And that particular session, we will have retiring Senator Mark Stoops and Hannah Carlock from the ARC of Indiana, and they will be giving us information about how to make a better relationship with your legislator. What do you do to get to know your legislator? How do you talk to them? How do you interact with them? How do you let them know what your issues are? And so we would love to have you come back and be a part of that advocacy luncheon and join our forces in terms of trying to get information out to legislators and let them know we're here. So thank you for coming today. I hope all of you have a great afternoon. If you want another little bit of food, please help yourself on the way out.